Well, Russ, I kind of really wanted to get straight into perhaps what is the biggest news in boxing at the moment, and that is the Usyk Dubois second fight coming up in July of this year. I wonder, did you watch the first press conference? And what did you make of it all? The attempts by Dubois' team to rattle Usyk, and specifically, I guess, by Don Charles, who kept mentioning the word cheat in an attempt to get under Usyk's skin. What did you make of all of it?
Whether it's Don Charles, who I have respect for, or anybody else, I don't know that there's anything I deplore more than a trainer or manager talking shit directly to a boxer. I think that's one of the most cowardly things you can do, because you can talk about your guy, you can say how great your guy is, but when you start talking to a fighter and attacking him, when we all know that when the bell rings, you go down the steps, that's not from my era, that's not from my time, that's not from my education in boxing. That's not, to me, that just shows what little respect you have. And okay, if you don't want to have respect for the guy, that's fine. You don't have to. You want to call him a cheat? We all know. You're just saying that you're hyping your guy. You're trying to stand by your guy. Okay. But don't talk to the fighter. Don't talk to the fighter, because you go down the steps when the bell rings.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Russ, in your experience, have those kind of mind games ever worked against Usyk?
Well, not just Usyk, but those supposed mind games clearly only work at best 50% of the time, because one guy is always right at a press conference and the other guy's always wrong. So I think it all depends on who the fighter is, who you're fighting. I think who you're fighting, how you're fighting makes more, it has far more importance than something, the trainer says to the other fighter and says, you're a cheat and you're not a God-fearing man and you're a liar. And, I think this is just, absolutely insane that that's even happening. And yet, despite visual footage of this showing clearly what happened, it's still ignored. No, it didn't happen. The pictures are lying. I find that so problematic, Neil. You have no idea. It bothers me so much. And I wish I remembered the name of the referee who said, a British referee who said to me, I don't understand the controversy. You wear a cup. The cup protects an area that is out of bounds for a fighter. You're not supposed to get hit there. Now, we're not talking about it being high above the belt, because that wasn't the case with Usyk. You're wearing a cup and a protective cup and your shorts. Anything that lands on the shorts or the protective cup is low. It's not like the punch lands halfway on the skin and halfway on the belt. No, that's not what happened. There was no skin contact. So everything was on the groin guard. It's a foul. And he's right. That's exactly right. That's the most simplest, clearest definition of fairness of the rule. And the video evidence supports that time and time again. But yet it's ignored. And I don't understand. And I keep hearing it's on the belt. But the belt, you realize, is a fictitious line that exists that's this thick at your navel. Anything south of that is a foul. And this wasn't a case of half and half. It wasn't like the glove landed half on the navel or above the navel and half below. No, it was all below that. So even with video support, you still want to call out this guy and say you cheated, blah, 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 and not give the man the respect he deserves. You think that's the right way to get into his head, and now you're going to make a difference in the fight.
Well, of course, Russ, Usyk has a reputation of being very steely cool in these press conferences. So maybe it was just their attempt to get under his skin and elicit some sort of a response. Now, Usyk's team said that they counted up to 20 low blows in that first fight. I know you were in the corner that night. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Well, I wonder, did you notice this number of low blows, or at least blows that were close to being low in the fight?
Not only is there no doubt that there were low blows, I'm not going to say what a count is. Obviously, I'm not counting it, but I do remember
Mm.
this. Not only were there numerous low blows, but when the low blow happened, the controversial one that we're talking about, well, controversial for them, not for me. I remember, and I wish the supervisor would come on this, and he'll validate this. The commissioner, he'll validate this as well. I was screaming at them, saying that that was intentional. That was intentional. There was no doubt in my mind that that low blow was thrown intentionally. Was not accidental. It was intentionally thrown. I believe that, and I'll go to my grave believing that.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. I think there's a bit of a split, not only in the boxing community, but also in the general public. That it 50% perhaps think it was a low blow, with the remainder thinking no, it's not. So it's a very difficult one to make a judgment on. But I completely respect your view on that. Now I wonder whether we can just move on to talk about Dubois, because I wonder, do you accept that he is an improved fighter after his first fight against Usyk? I mean, since then he's fought Miller, and I think he stopped Miller in the last round or the penultimate round. Then he's fought Hrgovic, and that was quite a tough fight for the first 2 or 3 rounds, but he came through that one. And then, of course, he had his absolute massive win over Joshua, where he dominated the fight, and ended it in round 5, I think, with a knockout. Do you accept that perhaps he's an improved fighter since the first Usyk fight?
I think there's no doubt about it. I absolutely do think. And I also believe, contrary to now what Queensberry's putting out there in their videos, and Dubois is ridiculing it, now. But that pep talk that he got after losing to Usyk, I think contributed to the success he's having now. I think that's the thing that made him move on and motivate him to move on from that fight and to go on to bigger and better things. And I think a direct responsibility is what Usyk said to him after the fight, and didn't trash him and let him know that this is boxing and that you can come back from this, and instantly gave him the belief that that he can do this again. Now he had to go out and do it himself for sure. There's no doubt about that. But I absolutely do think he's an improved fighter. I think he's a confident fighter. I think he believes in himself a little bit more. So yes, I certainly do think he's a better fighter, and he had to get better. There's no doubt about it, especially based on the 3 wins he had, each one better than the last.
Well, I suppose we need to talk about Usyk. I mean, he looks naturally bigger, even though I think his weight is levelled out at about sort of 226 pounds, I think. Has he improved since the Dubois fight? I mean, he looks more confident in these press conferences. He looks to dominate them more, take charge of them more. Do you feel he's an improved fighter? And do you think he's kind of grown into the heavyweight division more?
Well, I was just going to say, you say he looks bigger. I think he certainly filled out and have people believing that he's a legit heavyweight, because, you have to remember, for 2 years we had to listen to, Fury say, you're a middleweight. So nobody believed him. We had others saying, Joshua was too big for him, and, he's going to impose himself on it. And when he didn't the first time, well, he was going to sure try to do it the second time, and impose it. And I think finally people realized, this guy, and then Fury, we beat him twice. I think they started to realize that, this guy who they think is a middleweight is not really a middleweight, but he's a bona fide, legitimate heavyweight. So, yeah, I mean, has he improved? I think every great fighter, with each win, especially against quality opposition that Usyk has had, I think just makes him a better fighter, even if his skill set remains the same. Just the mere fact that he has more rounds under his belt, an extra 24 rounds against Tyson Fury, that has to be worth 40 rounds against regular opposition, just in experience and dealing with that size. So, of course, he's a better fighter, and he's definitely a more experienced fighter. And I think the same thing applies when he talks at the press conferences, and how he's a little much more at ease now than he used to be. And, he understands it a little bit more, and he's feeling more comfortable coming back to the UK. He loves coming to the UK. This started off with Tony Bellew and has just built from there. So, all these things of the confidence and the experience is all just coming to fruition, and his maturity as a man and as a champion of the world in 2 weight categories. I think he's starting to carry that, very well.
Okay, so considering everything we've talked about this evening, is there any way you can see there being a different outcome to the first fight? Barring maybe a one-off perfect punch or a fluke punch from Dubois, a bit like the Parker shot on Bacoli? Or do you just see this being sort of more of the same from Usyk?
Look, I mean, obviously, I think that, my guy's going to win the fight.
Of course.
Obviously, I think he's going to be prepared like he always is. But it's boxing, right? Anything can happen. So I hope not. I hope this is going to go according to plan. But it's boxing. Let's be honest. Anything could happen in the heavyweight. I hate when they say, especially in the heavyweight division. A knockout can come in any division. That's why we have weight classes. Guys can punch in any weight division. So, you always have to be careful, and you have to be wary of what the opponent brings, and you want to make sure that you don't get clipped and get stopped.
So keeping it nice and simple for me, how do you see this one panning out, Russ?
I think Usyk, has so much more in his arsenal, not to mention his gas tank, that I think even Dubois realizes that not only did he not win a round of the fight, not only he knows deep down that the low blow was a low blow, because he didn't complain about it when it was going on. He stood in the corner sheepishly with his head down, knowing he had committed a foul, and accepted it by standing there. He didn't protest it. He stood there waiting for the referee to resume the contest. And still with that, the pressure that Usyk put on him, just made him fight at a level that he's not accustomed to fighting. And so I think that same thing will prevail. And I think that Usyk just has too much in that engine for him. And, as spirited as an effort as he might try to put on, fighting at the pace that Usyk makes you fight, you better have an engine. You better have an engine.